Thanks all. Hello. And thanks, Matt, too, in particular, for the structure of tonight's event, because I think it's flowing really well. I think, great opening, Maureen, and then what you were saying, Liz, just sets the scene and then leads so well into what I want to talk about, which is what my experience is, which is where the rubber hits the road within government departments. So what happens within government agencies in relation to information and accessibility and meeting community needs. And so Liz has set the scene for why there are such important needs for transparency, and that comes back to government. How do we do this? How do we enable this? What are the huge opportunities and requirements that exist in this space? And then what are the complexities that are either aiding or inhibiting us from achieving those? So that's what I'm looking at today. And so what I wanted to start with was just by flagging what we're doing so well and what great frameworks exist within government. So building on what has been said so far, but New South Wales government and so many governments, but particularly New South Wales, have developed really incredibly strong frameworks for information management. And each of them really do have people and purpose at their core. We have great frameworks which should enable and do often enable so much. And just key ones that I thought of were GIPA. The State Records Act is incredibly powerful and important in this space. Privacy Act, the relatively new Data Sharing Act, which is within the New South Wales jurisdiction and is being rolled out across other jurisdictions around the country. The New South Wales Open Data Policy and New South Wales Open Data Program and Framework, which was a real world leader, and New South Wales has really led the charge in open data. And interestingly, I used to work in local government at the City of Sydney for a number of years, and just that one organisation had more than 400 pieces of legislation that applied to its operations that had information and data related components. So there were just hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of information related requirements, most of which are public accessibility or public record creation requirements, so that the information is there. It's interwoven through all of our jurisdictional and legal frameworks. So information management, creation and accessibility is fundamentally important in our legislative structures and has been recognised as so for such an incredibly long time. So we've got great frameworks out there for information management and information access. And the purpose of these frameworks is very clear in each of these pieces of legislation and these policies and these programs that they're supporting. They're all designed to support accountability, transparency, innovation and efficient management within organisations. They all recognise that information is the lifeblood of organisations and recognise that it's such an important public good. But I think what we've been touching on so far is how are we supporting those frameworks? We've got these infrastructures, but are we supporting these frameworks, and are we supporting the communities that need the information that's meant to be generated through these frameworks? Are we supporting this through digital transformation? Are we adapting information management and access enough to the digital world? And are we building the necessary information capability and maturity in individuals and in corporate cultures? They're really tricky questions. Interesting questions, but and I think there are real issues that we need to be looking at and addressing here. And I think another key thing that we need to take account of is just how rapidly and significantly information is evolving. A lot of our traditional practices, processes, ideas of what these legislative frameworks are trying to achieve, they're based very much on document-based records. But we're suddenly surrounded by, and so much of our information now is much more dynamic forms of information. So it's data, it's analytics, it's information, it's AI, it's artificial intelligence increasingly. And has our implementation of those really brilliant solid frameworks that have been established, is our implementation of that, where the rubber is hitting the road, is that taking account of these new forms of information which the public, which business has just as much right to know, to access, to understand, to leverage? Are we keeping pace with that? And I think, as Liz has touched on, and as we all know, information is just a huge public good. Government information is such a significant public good. And there's so much really interesting research about quantifying it. What is the actual value of this information? And in 2014, Nicholas Gruen did a really interesting study on the value of open data, and concluded in that report that the potential value of government open data is up to $25 billion per year, which is 1.5% of GDP, just in what can be easily leveraged from government opening up its data. So the value there is extreme in a financial sense, let alone in all the other community accountability, personal senses for which we need information. And open data itself is just such a powerful asset, and numerous reports identify this too, because it's non-rivalrous. If I use it, doesn't stop you from using it. We can all collectively use it. It's non-excludable. It's open. We can't lock it away. We all get to benefit from it. It's economically significant, can contribute all those billions to GDP. Transformational, just having this information that we've never had before can suddenly enable us to transform, to change, to do so much more. It's transparent. It's playing into all those agendas that are really important to support accountability and open government. And it's already there. Like, we're creating this stuff every day as we sit in our offices doing our stuff. It's an existing public good. It already exists. We're leveraging it, we're setting it free, we're enabling it to serve new purposes. So there's so much benefit to it. And there's a huge amount of really great stuff happening, and particularly happening within the New South Wales environment. Again, just listing some initiatives from the top of my head. The New South Wales Data Analytics Centre is enabling so much. The New South Wales Digital State Archives, and also the OpenGov website. A lot of the issues that you identify in your research, Maureen, OpenGov can facilitate that. It's a great resource that State Archives has developed, where it's the home for government publications within New South Wales. So when you want to get it off your website, which people tend to want to do quite regularly, it's there with all the appropriate metadata and contextualisation that can come from these archival descriptive systems, and manage this as an ongoing asset and archive to the state. So we've got so much great infrastructure already there that we can leverage, principally through state archives. Data New South Wales is a fantastic asset for open data in New South Wales. We've got great information access and privacy guidance and frameworks, great information management and records advice. And we've also got a new New South Wales digital government strategy, which aims to really help New South Wales government better transform in a digital world. And it's got 3 key priority areas, which again tie into all of this and really emphasise the importance of customer experience, of data, and digital on the inside. How do we really make transformation truly digital? Not just fast paper, not just a veneer over the top, but how do we really re-engineer our processes so that we're digital on the inside? So there's really good momentum and good activities taking place. And the stuff around the corner is huge. So initiatives that will completely transform our worlds by capturing and using data and information in brand new and often real-time ways as well, such as complete leveraging of the Internet of Things across infrastructure and assets and communities, smart cities strategies, and data-informed service delivery. The power and potential of these types of things is incredibly transformational in our society. But in all of this good stuff, in all of this transformation, are we applying the frameworks? Are we really comprehensively considering this whole gamut of good information management, good information access, privacy? Are we really considering and applying all these frameworks? I think we really do need to be better at applying our records, access and privacy frameworks to these new forms of information and these new forms of working and the new forms of technology, as well as the legacy systems of technology that are being used to achieve this. And we need to have really genuine conversations about what the community wants, expects and needs from the work that we're doing, what the new forms of information should be, how the information should be created, what are we creating, what are we capturing, what are we gathering, how are we using it, how are we managing it, how are we sharing it, and the scope and impact of the transformations that are underway too. Having good, honest, clear conversations with people so that this is widely understood the information that's out there and what's being done with it. And I also think we need to reinvent information. We need to rethink its creation, use, management, access, and longevity within its frameworks. Again, touching on what you were saying, Maureen. I say down here, we need to be more archival in our thinking. archivists traditionally think in the long now. Okay, what do we need now, but what are we going to need 10, 15, 20 years down the track? And in current society, we're not very good at that, as your research has demonstrated. We don't have that longevity. But as a community, we need certain information assets to exist in the incredibly long term. And we're not very good at bringing that into the current space and thinking about those longevity requirements. We need to think through broader lenses, not just our innovation or technology or service delivery lenses, but what does the community need from information? What about public and personal good? What about transparency? What about accountability? How do we knit these conversations together? They can very easily be knitted together. So how do we bring the right people together to achieve this? And we need to bake in our processes and rules, whatever we define from those, bake those in at the start of our system and service design, of our outsourcing arrangements and our process transformations. They can't be retrospectively built in, so how do we bring these conversations, how do we foreground them, and then make them just BAU, business as usual, in what we're doing going forward. And I think we need to connect information management and information access more directly to digital transformation. We need to acknowledge that digital transformation really fundamentally needs information management, it needs information access, and it needs public engagement as critical inputs. We won't have successful transformation if we don't achieve this. And we need to be less focused on technology and more on people and purpose and our long-term community needs for information.